Jess is at home with her autistic son, Tommy, and she is keeping her son quiet. Tommy drops the crayons while drawing, which she cleans up and rings her doorbell. She goes outside to look but no one is there, after which she sees a note, Triangle Sector. She scolds Tommy and leaves toward the coast side. Greg is on the boat when his friend Sally and her husband Downey arrive. Sally brings her friend Heather and introduces her to Greg. Victor comes with Jess and Greg sees that her situation isn't so well. Greg tells her if you're not feeling well we can go tomorrow, but she says I want to go. Greg introduces her to the rest of the friends, after which they sail on his boat. Jess dreams of herself on the beach and wakes up to find herself in a boat. Heather asks her if she is okay and Jess says it was just a bad dream. Heather says bad dreams are good and gives her a glass of champagne. Greg asks Victor about Jess and he tells him she was pretty upset when she met me. Heather and Jess come upstairs and Jess apologizes to Greg for sleeping up late. Greg jokes that if you say sorry again, I'll throw you off the boat. Seeing them both, Sally tells Heather to talk to Greg, but she says she's interested in Victor. Victor opens the sail of the boat to check the direction of the wind. Greg and Jess talk and Heather walks in and Jess leaves. The wind suddenly stops in the middle of the sea and they see a storm coming from the other side. They are alarmed to see this. Greg contacts the Coast Guard but his connection goes down. A panicked woman sends him signals that everyone is dead here and the connection is cut. Seeing the huge waves in the sea, Greg tells everyone to get in, but the storm has reached them by then. Greg and Victor try to salvage the boat, but the water comes in. Victor cuts the sails but their boat capsizes due to high winds. Everyone else is saved but Heather is drowned and Sally calls out to Heather but there is no response. Now they're all sitting on an overturned boat in the middle of the ocean. Greg tells Jess we'll be out of here soon and after a while, they see a large ship. They are happy to see this and seeing a person on the ship, they start calling for help. Jess is shocked and they board the ship, but they see no man on the deck. Greg tells them we go to the captain and call the Coast Guards, while Jess is still worried. They go inside the ship and shout for help but there is no one else in the ship except them. Jess tells Greg that it feels like I know the place. They see a ship's picture of 1932 which makes them suspicious. They hear a key dropping sound and Jess sees the keys to her house and car, and Sally thinks maybe Heather is here. They move to the dining hall where they see the fresh fruits and food but find no one else. Sally shouts Heather and Greg stops her. Downey says we have to find the captain while Jess sees someone and Victor rushes to find him. Greg tells Downey to wait for Vic and Jess says I think Victor's in danger but Greg doesn't take it seriously. Greg explains to her that this is a flash of your mind because you left Tommy home alone. They go to a room where there is a sign written in blood on the glass go to the theater. Greg still wants to go to the admin room and Jess tells him are you ignoring that blood? Greg says whoever saw us coming on the sap might have been kidding. Jess gets angry because he doesn't listen to her and leaves. Sally and Downey notice blood on the floor and follow the drops into the empty theater. Jess is in the dining hall and sees the food become filthy. Victor arrives covered in blood and attacks Jess. Jess pulls him away and he dies. She hears a gunshot and goes to the theater where she finds Greg dead and Sally tells her you told us to come here. Jess is shocked to hear this and someone shoots them, killing Sally and Downey. Jess runs away and the masked person chases her to the deck. Jess fights with the masked person who says something before the jump but Jess doesn't understand. Jess hits the person and he falls into the water. Now Jess is alone on the ship and she hears a song playing. She changes the song and looks at herself in the mirror. She hears someone's voice outside and when she looks down they're all shouting for help. She is shocked to see that she is stuck in a time loop. The loop starts again. The key falls from Jess and she sees her friends. She goes to the room where the blood is written. She sees everyone in the dining room where Victor comes running out to see her. She goes to the deck where she sees Downey's body in the water and Victor arrives. Victor asks her how she got here so quickly but Jess shows him Downey's body and nothing in the sea. Jess tells Victor that I have the same image as you, but Victor doesn't believe her. Furious, Jess pushes Victor and his head hits the nail. Jess goes to the engine room with a pounding headache and reads the slips that say if they come on the ship, kill them all. She picks up the gun and finds the locket she wore with her son's pictures inside hanging from a small grate. When she looks further inside, she sees there are multiples, as if this same incident has happened before. She now accompanies Victor to the dining room where she sees her look-alike. She fails to shoot her and lets her go. Jess tells Victor that last time you attacked me in this place. Victor doesn't remember anything and dies. She hears the gunshot again and goes to the theater where she shoots her lookalike. The masked person is a second part of Jess and she tells Downey it's a time loop. Jess tells Sally and Downey to shoot if they see anyone and goes outside. Downey fires and Jess runs toward them, but the masked Jess confronts them first. The second Jess takes them while the other calls them and she tells them to ignore the voice. She takes them to the room where she stabs Downey and Sally. Sally crawls outside. First, Jess runs to save Sally while the other kills Downey. Sally hides in the control room and makes a distressed call which Greg receives earlier. Jess follows Sally upstairs where she sees many of her dead bodies as she dies in the same place every time in the loop. Jess watches her two doppelgangers fight, after which she tells Sally to hold her breath. She understands that a new loop starts after everybody dies, but Sally is terrified and dies. A new loop starts and mentally fearful Jess decides to see her son again. She sees her doppelganger telling Victor about the loop story and kills him. She goes into the room and writes on the glass with Downey's blood, then throws his body into the ocean. She then goes to Downey and Sally and tells them to meet in the theater. Jess then goes to the armor room where she takes the gun and wears the jacket and mask. The masked Jess confronts Greg, shoots him and kills Downey and Sally. She injures the other Jess and they both fight until in a confrontation with herself, she ends up falling off the ship. She wakes up on the beach she dreamed of and takes a car lift to her home. She looks at her son through the window and sees her past self on the lawn. However, this time, we hear the audio that was missing, and find out that past Jess is blatantly angry with Tommy, cursing at him and yelling at him. The doorbell of the house also rings by Jess as past Jess asks her neighbor about it. Present Jess sneaks into the house, and using a hammer, bludgeons her past self to death. Unfortunately, Tommy witnesses this, and present Jess assures her son he just had a bad dream. Jess then takes the locket from her former self's neck, and puts the dead body in a black duffel bag, before putting it in her car's trunk. Jess then proceeds to drive her son to school, promising that things are going to be different from now on. As they drive along the ocean, a seagull suddenly slams into the windshield, leaving bloody streaks. Jess pulls over to retrieve the dead bird and throw it into the ocean. However, when she goes to throw it over the edge of the embankment, she sees something that causes her to pause. Much like the multiple necklaces and Sally's from before, there are multiple dead seagulls pooled in the area where she was planning to dispose of the one she just hit. Jess disposes of the bird quickly, and then rushes to get into her car. As they take off, Tommy begins to panic over the blood on the windshield. As Jess turns to calm her son, she turns into the incoming traffic lane, and ends up hitting a semi. In the aftermath, we see Jess watching the aftermath, as we see her body and that of her sons lying on the highway. A man in a nearby taxi is observing this as well, saying that there's nothing that anyone can do now. Jess then requests the driver take her to the harbor. She returns to coast and here we see Victor meets Jess. Jess then begins the cycle anew, intent to somehow prevent her son from dying all over again. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to watch more videos like this.